I'm going to try to keep this relatively brief, down to 15 minutes or so, but if you have questions at any time, feel free to stop me. I'm happy to answer them as we go along, and I'll certainly ask you at the end. What I'm going to do, this is sort of the quick and dirty guide to better writing. It's not, you'll write better in 15 minutes, but it's in 15 minutes, I'll give you an idea of how to start writing better. Because it's, as Dr. Metcalf said, it's a really long process. But we're going to start at sort of the top level in terms of content and organization and work down to the science level. And we will look at some sort of specific common problems that may or may not have come from your updates. So don't be surprised if they look familiar. Yeah, and then we will take care of any questions you have and talk about how to recognize those problems, how to find those problems, and then what you need to do to fix them. And the sort of overall theme for this, for your writing, for good writing, for competent writing, is clear, simple, and direct. Those are the three things that you just want to keep in mind, keep in the back of your head as you're writing. Clear, simple, and direct. If your writing is clear, simple, and direct, even if it's not artful, even if it's not elegant, although it probably will be, it's competent, people will follow you, which is really the main goal. So let's start real quick. This is going to be covering some of the stuff we talked about with pitches, which is what the purpose of writing is. The whole purpose of communication is to get your ideas into someone else's head. And to do that, you need to, first thing you need to do to decide on that content is you need to be aware of who you're writing to, what they know, and what you want them to know. And that's really going to guide the form that your writing takes. It's going to guide sort of the level of language that it takes. If you're talking to other engineers, you're going to be, you know that they know technical information that you know. If you're talking to a customer, if you're talking to an advertiser, you're going to use a whole different kind of language. And that's, we talked about that with pitches. One of the differences with writing, though, is you don't always know who's going to read it. You don't know what they're going to, you have an idea, but you want to sort of make your writing a little bit flexible so that people with different knowledge and who are coming at it for different reasons will still get a lot out of it. And the best way to do that is to start with how you organize it. And I hope Dr. Metcalf doesn't have a problem with this. This sort of goes back to what Jess said. Jess said people don't read business plans. I suggest that you specifically write for people who do not want to read what you have to write and who are not going to read what you have to write. You want to make it easy for them to sort of take a look at it, get an idea, and not read anything more than they have to. And there's basically four things that you can do to do that. The first is that tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. An introduction, it doesn't necessarily have to be anything long for your weekly updates. I think I probably wrote this on about half of them. Give me 2 or 3 sentences that, real quick, let me know what's coming. It'll let your readers know if they care enough to keep reading. And the next sort of way you can do that, when they decide, all right, there's things here that I want to know, how do you help them find them real quickly? Use good, informative headings and subheadings as you write. If you write introduction, body, conclusion, which I've had people turn in papers that say their headings are introduction, body, and conclusion, that is essentially meaningless. Have some content in those headings and subheadings. Set them apart from the text. Use, we can talk about sort of specific styles, use all caps and bold, and for your first level headings, and then use bold but not all caps. There's some conventions which we can talk about later, but make them stand out. Let people find what you have to say as easily as possible. The next thing, and Dr. Metcalf sort of just told you not to do this, I'm going to tell you to do it, is include...
Wait, there's a rule about that.
Yes, there is a rule about that.
No, you're allowed to tell them. The rule is what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Figures and charts help, especially for people who don't want to read. If you just think about when you pick up a magazine or a book and you sort of flip through, the first thing that you often look at are figures and charts and tables. It doesn't mean that you want to have all figures figures and charts and tables, but it means you need to make them clear. And I think this is really important and often gets missed. You need to have them have really good labels and captions, so people know what they are and where they fit into this thing that they're not reading. And they'll be able to then find out where to go for the information that's in there if they want to know more. And the last sort of organizational tool is going to take it down a level to paragraphs, and that is topic sentences. And this is going to go back to the 7th grade English class. We're going to go into a little section that's all 7th grade English class. So the paragraph is really the level, I think, that you need to write at. A paragraph is the unit where you write about one main idea. And a good rule of thumb is that you should be able to explain that idea in 5 or 6 words. If you can't explain it, not necessarily in detail, but explain what this paragraph is about in 5 or 6 words, there's probably too much in there. This doesn't mean that the paragraph should say, this is about sales. That doesn't tell us a lot. This is about sales from last quarter, gives us a little bit more. Yeah, it doesn't need to be a lot of information, but it needs to tell us something. And what I actually recommend that you do, especially as you get into these longer papers, like your 10-page papers, is after you've written a draft, actually go through and gloss what you've written. Print it out and take a pen and paper and go through paragraph by paragraph and just real quick sum it up in those 5 or 6 words. This will let you do a couple things. It makes sure that first that you have good paragraphs. Again, if you can't do that, then probably means there's something wrong. It also makes it really easy to move your ideas around. Think about what order, are these in the order that they need to be in? Do they flow naturally? Not the words, but the ideas. And if you, what I like to do sometimes is actually write those little phrases on note cards or post-it notes and sit at my desk and actually put them in order, especially if you're having trouble understanding where to go, and physically move them around. That may or may not work for you, but I think it's a really good tool. And the last thing that those 5 or 6 words will do is they will tell you what needs to be in your topic sentence. Those 5 or 6 words need to be somewhere up at the top of your paragraph. That way, again, the people who don't care about what you have to say and aren't really reading, who are just going to look at the first 1 or 2 sentences in each paragraph, you can be sure that they're going to get at least part of what you want. So it's sort of a guide for what needs to be in those topic sentences. So that's the quick part on organization. Any questions before I go on? Yeah.
Well, being an engineer, kind of the only, I guess, writing background I really have is more of like English and like history type writing, you know. So how do you like balance because mostly when I write, I'm so used to trying to make it like sound good, you know. So like, how do you balance that and making sure, like you said, it's like to the point?
I'm going to get into some real specific examples of that next. Again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. Make it simple and direct. Making it sound good, in my opinion, means making it easy to understand, making it simple. Obviously, if you're writing technical information, it's complex ideas, it's going to require more complex language. But as simple as you can keep it, as direct as you can keep it, that's, to my mind, the best.
So we shouldn't be worried about trying to like keep people, I guess, not interested, but like, like.
Keep them interested by having something good to say. That would be my suggestion.
Not like making it sound good.
Yeah, not making it sound good. And we'll talk, actually, I'm just going to go ahead on and sort of talk about some ways to make it sound good. And some things that I found as students sort of sometimes think makes it sound good, and I disagree. So we're going to talk about style. Again, clear, direct, simple. And I'd actually say that's the order that you want to put it in. Your number 1 priority is to make it clear, make sure that your idea is getting across. Next, make it direct. And last, make it simple. Some things you just can't make simple, and that's okay. But it should be a goal if you can. And the first thing to making something clear is making sure that you're saying something meaningful, and that you're giving actual information with it. If it's worth saying something, if it's worth putting it in a paper, say something meaningful. Give some actual information. So we'll take a look at a couple of these. The team is several weeks behind schedule. There's nothing horrible with that. This machine runs faster than this other machine, but it's much more expensive. Several, not particularly useful. Faster, not terribly useful. More expensive. It's some idea, but if you're going to say this, why not give actual values, give meaningful examples. The team is 6 weeks behind schedule. Actually, gives your reader a much better idea of what's going on. This machine is 84% faster, but costs $2,000. If you're writing that sentence anyway, and you have that information, put it in there. There's absolutely no reason not to. And
Yeah, can I make a comment there? What you'll often see in presentations is, look at that bottom sentence. The person will say, they'll have that sentence up and they'll say, the CF 553 is 90% faster. And we're all sitting here looking, this is 84. So people tend to round, and I think that's very damaging to their
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah, I often give that feedback to people all the time. You have a number up there on that screen, use the same number when you say it. And a lot of times also, you'll put a number up, somebody put a number up there, and then they'll be talking about something else, and they'll say another number. It just gets confusing between that. And you just have to realize that if you put a big number on the screen, people are going to be expecting you to say that number.
What about if you say 80% instead of 90%?
That's worse.
if you know, then say it. There's no reason not to say it.
And by the way, whenever they round, they always round in the direction of making their point strong. Never do what you just said.
All right. The next thing, we're going to be clear, direct, and simple. In terms of using direct language, and bear in mind that these are sort of style issues. These aren't 100% rules. Sometimes there's a reason to do it one way, but as a general rule, use the active voice. Tell us, unless you have a good reason not to, don't say that something happened. Say, I did it. If you're sending a weekly update, especially, if you're telling your team what you did, say you did it. It's, I think, easier to read. It's shorter. It's more concise. It's more direct and to the point. So our pitch has been modified and our lean canvas has been revised in the manner advised by our mentors. Grammatically correct, but if I were writing, I think this is much easier for everyone involved. We revised our pitch in lean canvas based on our mentor's suggestions. Or we followed our mentor's advice and revised our pitch in lean canvas. Or whatever it is, but just straightforward, active language makes it easier on everybody. And the next one, in addition to writing in the active voice, is use positive language. Tell us what things are whenever possible rather than what they are not. It's not uncommon for businesses to lose data. Again, perfectly fine grammatically, but it's so much easier and so much more direct and concise to say businesses often lose data. You're saying in 4 words instead of 8 the same content. And as a rule, if you can convey the same information in 4 words instead of 8, do it.
9.
Excuse me. You're right.
But who's counting?
All the more important. Less than 50%. Yes?
Oh, can you clarify what you mean by passive voice? Is it just
Yes.
when something doesn't have, has an anonymous factor?
Yeah, so the especially if you don't tell us who it was done by, that's the worst of the passive voice. But instead of saying Joe did this, saying this was done by Joe, it's just going around instead of going straight through the idea.
If you remember, like, your third grade, where they say Jack ran up the hill, the subject is in the beginning of the sentence and does the action, does the verb next. In passive voice, the subject is at the end of the sentence and the verb comes in the beginning and the action is being done by something behind the verb. So it's just, I mean, that's not a hard and fast rule, but that's just kind of an easy way to catch passive voice.
And I believe it was Jack and Jill went up there.
And just to be clear, there are times when it's totally appropriate to use this. There are times when things just happen, when there is no actor, there's no logical subject, and sometimes it's okay. But if you're going to use passive voice, or if you're going to use negative construction like this, there should be a reason. You should be able to explain why. It shouldn't just be sort of the default. This is how I'm going to write. So.
I actually have a question on
Yeah.
that last one. Because when I'm writing, a lot of times I'll fall into that it is construction, that general just pronoun it. Like, is there a good way to get around that? Or is it specific instance by instance? Because I'll just fall into it. I'm just like, what does this it refer to? Does it refer to anything?
I can't think of a sort of quick, easy way to get around it. I think just sort of take on it. The fact that you're aware of it is the biggest first step, because what happens is we fall into these patterns and we just sort of go. I think with those constructions, it's usually fairly easy to see a more clear line through. So if you have any specific examples, that would make it easier.
Sorry.
Yes.
What is the lifespan of pronouns across sentences and commas?
That's actually in something that I was going to skip. I'll use it and sort of.
What was the question?
What's the lifespan of pronouns? How far can they spread? The easiest thing is as long as there's not anything significant in the way. So that's the very basic answer. If that pronoun doesn't change, if there's not something to confuse the situation, you're in good shape. Sometimes that'll happen.
So you can use pronoun for a whole paragraph?
I wouldn't. But people will be able to understand what you're saying. I'll talk about that in a couple. The next thing is use simple language. This doesn't mean dumb it down. This doesn't mean make it vague. But if you have an alternative between a 10-letter word and a 5-letter word and they mean the same thing, again, unless there's a very good reason, use the 5-letter word. Instead of saying I communicated with a customer by telephone, we have an awesome word for communicating with someone by telephone. Call. Yeah. We arranged a face-to-face appointment. What are face-to-face appointments? Meetings. Yeah. And Tuesday of next week. Yeah. So I called the customer and set up a meeting for next Tuesday. Is so much more direct and to the point and straightforward. Your reader will thank you. And it's the same. It's basically the same rule as, don't use a 10-word sentence when a 5-word sentence will do. It works just as well for words. It's also something to think about with your audience. Use simple language can mean avoid jargon unless you are writing specifically for other engineers, for other people in your field. The more likely everyone that you meet is to use or to know the language that you're using, it's probably the better. All right. So this is some grammar stuff that I will cover real quick, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through too much. And this gets to your point. The main point that I have with this is that when you have things like subject further they get apart and the more there is between them, the more likely you're going to forget where you were going, the more likely it is that there's going to be a mistake. And it's something to be aware of. It's a really, really common problem. And even in the papers that I've seen from you guys so far. So we have a big chunk in the middle between our subject and our verb. Our subject is our team, and the verb there is our, sort of gets to the point of the problem. But sort of as we go through all these other people, you lose what's happening. So one of the things that I really recommend is if you have to say something like this, take out all the stuff in the middle and see if it makes sense. And same for the second one. The second one, I'm sure you all have wonderful mothers, and from the time that you were like 4 years old, they told you, it's not me and Jason. Say Jason and I. Jason and I is right. Don't say me and Jason. The problem is, mothers are always right except when they're not. Sometimes it's supposed to be Jason and me. And again, take out what's in the middle and see if it makes sense. So our team, which is the subject of the sentence, are having trouble with the Ethernet connection in their offices. It's a problem. Jason promised to send copies of the report to I for proofreading. It's a problem. One of the ways to get around this is to try and keep the stuff that's supposed to be together. Sometimes you can do that, sometimes it's not as easy. In the first example, I think the easiest thing to do is to cut that stuff out. You don't need that in the middle of your sentence, make it 2 sentences. So our team is having trouble with the Ethernet connection in our office. Other people in the encampment are having the same problem. We are not alone. Everybody has this problem. There's a million ways to say it, but get it out of there, get it out of a position where it's going to confuse you or throw you off track. In the bottom example, there's, not a whole lot you can do, so just make sure that it's what it's
Well,
supposed
the real trouble with that first paragraph is that it's not true. It can't possibly be true.
Real quick, modifiers, again, a lot of times when you read something and it's just sort of awkward, like it makes sense, but it just doesn't sound right, it's just kind of awkward. A lot of times that has to do with where you put your modifiers. Adverbs, like in this case, the modifier is an adverb often, and as we'll see, it can mean a couple different things in the sentence depending on where you put it. The closer you put your modifiers as you write to the things that they're modifying, as a rule, the more clear it's going to be. So teams who seek their mentor's advice often are more successful. What is happening often? Success or seeking in this sentence?
Seeking. No idea.
It's either way. It can be read either way. And still, it's not grammatically wrong, it's just not particularly clear. So if we want seeking to be what's modified, put it over by seeking. If we want successful to be modified, put it over by successful. And of course, both of these are true, but we don't want to try and put them together in one sentence to save space. The other real quick thing with modifiers is they have to have something to modify. This is another problem where you're sort of reading through and you get the idea, but it just doesn't, it's not real clear. Updating their status in real time, users will be able to keep track of all their purchases. Who's updating the status? Users is probably what it means here. I'll show the next example in a second. And then again, not having paid enough attention to the timing, the rollout was a failure. Who wasn't paying attention to the timing? The rollout wasn't paying attention to it. Yeah. Again, you get the idea, you understand what's happening here, but it just sort of puts a little hitch in your reading, makes you think a little bit more. In general, your readers, when you write, if they're going to read it, they're going to help you, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, they're going to try to make that leap to understand what you're saying. But don't make them have to. Don't make them think too hard. Tell them what they need to know. So updating their status in real time, the app will allow users to keep track of all their purchases. And this one, yeah, and the second one, the rollout was a failure because we didn't pay enough attention to the time. So in the first one, what's updating the status in real time? It's the app. Make sure put the app in there. Again, who failed? We did. So make sure and put we in there. Especially, don't say not having paid enough attention to the time. Don't use that as a technique to sort of avoid responsibility, which you can do with this, or you can do with passive voice. Good. Okay. So that any questions about this stuff? Yes.
Who specifically am I writing to with these updates? Am I writing to an informed audience, an uninformed audience, a technical audience? Who exactly should I be tailoring the updates to?
You should be tailoring your updates to the people that are in the subject line. And that's one of those things where it means you're going to have to write for people who care what you're writing and write for people who don't care what you're writing.
So I'm writing to everyone.
Yeah.
And this is a legitimate answer.
Yeah,
I just need to know.
no, absolutely. And the best way to do that is to give a real quick, short summary for your mentors, for the instructors to know what's going on, and then for people who need to know or want to know, go into further detail below. Some people are doing that with bulleted lists. Some people are doing it with paragraphs. There's not necessarily one right way, but make sure that it's sort of understandable on those couple of levels. That's my suggestion. Yeah.
So of the 10 points, how much is for how much you did, or the amount of work you did, and how much of it is for grammatical correctness?
None of it, from my point of view, is how much work you did. It's organization and grammar. I don't know what you guys are doing. I care. I'm somewhat interested, but it's not my job to care. So I'm looking at, is it organized well? Is it organized in a way that people can find the information? Are there grammar problems?
The grading of the content has not started yet.
But will there be a share for that?
Yes. That's my job.
Can you send us just a good example?
Yeah, I posted a couple on the Facebook group, but I can get some more.
I'll double check because I'm not getting.
Okay. And the other thing before I go ahead real quick to how we can fix all these problems. If you have specific questions, if there's things that are coming up in your paper where you constantly have a problem, where you're not using articles or you're not using articles the right way, which is a problem sometimes for people for whom English is their second language, come see me. I actually, long ago in a past life, got a degree in linguistics, so I live for the chance to explain these things to you. So please tell me I didn't waste 4 years of my life in undergrad. The next thing, let's save that. The next thing is how to recognize that you have these errors and how to do something about them when you find them. And I'm actually going to go a step further than Dr. Metcalf. He says, read what you're writing, and I'm going to say, read what you're writing out loud 10 or 15 minutes after you've written it. As he said, I think I never heard of changing the font or changing the typeface to sort of get your brain out of being locked in. But you know what you have to say, so when you read it, that's what you read. Take 10 or 15 minutes, go do something else, and come back to it, and let your brain, let that stuff sort of float away so that you're looking at it fresh again. Read it out loud, and you will catch things that you had no idea were in there. The other thing is to have someone else read it out loud. If you want to know if your writing is clear, have someone read it and see if it's clear. Have someone read it out loud and actually listen to them and watch them as they read it. If they are reading through and they sort of have to stop or go back a few words, or they just kind of get a look on their face, that means there's a problem there. They might not be able to articulate that problem, but their brain is trying to make a connection that isn't clear. So, make a note of it, and then go back and see where the problem is. Yeah.
So, about the reading out loud, I think that's a great idea, but don't you think that when you're writing, so there's a couple of different kinds, right? You're writing for someone to read silently, because most people don't read out loud. And then there's, you're writing for delivery. So either you or someone else is going to present that and speak it. And when delivery comes into play, then there's a whole different aspect to it. It really depends on how the person is delivering what you've written.
Right.
And so, with reading out loud, doesn't that skew your perception of your writing? If you're trying to listen to either yourself or someone else say that? Because then like their delivery or the way they read, whether they're confident about reading in general.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But don't think of it as you or them reading for it out loud. It's just adding another sense for you to see if things are right or wrong. If the person isn't a great reader, there will still be a change in sort of their pace or their tone when they get to something that doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's really what you're looking for. Not how good it sounds, how flowing it sounds. Well, yes, how flowing it sounds. But that's sort of what you want to look at. So, yes, but it sort of doesn't matter for
That
this.
makes another point, which is if you're writing to give a speech, you will write differently than if you're writing to be read. I think that's a valid point.
Absolutely.
I don't think it obviates your suggestion there.
Is that a question?
I was just going to say, another good technique, you have to proofread your own thing, read it backwards, because you'll catch a lot of the spelling that we want to take. Because a lot of times you get great, it's a really long paper, we're going to take too long. Something is short, reading backwards, you'll also catch misspellings or phrases that just don't sound weird.
I'll, just as a good reminder to keep in the back of your mind, I'll post this up to the Facebook page. There's a YouTube clip of a presentation called The Impotence of Proofreading, which I think is worth spending some time with. So the last thing, after you've identified that there are problems, what do? Get help. The first thing is you have a writing TA. I get paid not just to work the video camera and to be a grader. I'm supposed to work 20 hours a week, so come give me something to do. I'm here for you. You pay for this in your tuition and fees. Same for the undergraduate writing center. You've paid for it. It's there. Use it if you need to. That's my suggestion. The next one, a really great resource. I know UT is sort of supposed to be the best at everything, but Purdue has put together the absolute best website for help with grammar and punctuation and writing and style. It's called OWL, the Online Writing Lab. Basically, whatever question you have, if you Google OWL, commas, OWL, adjectives, OWL, word order, you'll come up with a really good description of what you need to do and really clear examples. And on a lot of them, there's two levels. There's a real quick version, and then there's a longer, take your time version. For some of them, they even have exercises you can go through. I can't stress enough how awesome OWL is. The next thing is style and usage guides. Strunk and White is really, really good. They've sold like 10 million copies. This is the 4th edition. The way you can tell that it's a really good book is if you look it up on Amazon, there's books called Adios Strunk and White and Why You Don't Need to Listen to Strunk and White, which is a suggestion that there's something going on there. It's 85 pages. You can read it in an hour and a half. If you read it and just sort of keep it in the back of your mind, I guarantee you it will make you a better writer. It's that good. It also has some sort of tables of commonly confused words and good reference stuff. Another thing you can do, I actually have it on my phone. You can get it from, I think it's Amazon for $3. There's an old version. This is our rewritten version of the book that was written in the 20s. The version from the 20s you can get for like 99 cents or sometimes for free. Don't get that one. Make sure you get the one from today. But it's like $3. Put it on your phone. You have it with you wherever you go, whenever you need it. Usage guides are also really good, especially if English.
Are you going to post the actual book name?
Yes, I'll put these up on Facebook. if you're not a native English speaker, usage guides can be really good. One of my favorites is by a guy named Michael Swan. It's called Practical English Usage. It's not like a how to learn English book. I mean, you guys are college students, you know English, but they're sort of little issues with idioms or with words. And even if you don't speak sort of American English as your first language, it's really useful for that too. I really recommend it. It's not $3, it's like $30, so don't run right out and get it, but if you're looking for something for your bookshelf, it's really good. And the last thing, team members and colleagues, have them help you. These are individual assignments, but this is also supposedly part of your team's business plan. Ask them, does this make sense? Do I need to have this in here? They're a great resource.